There is something missing in the world today. It's the one thing that can make the world okay. And it doesn't cost nothing, no, you don't even have to pay. Oh, oh. It's about doing the right thing every day. 'Cause you are the light, you are the sign, you are the only hope, keeping hope alive. Do the right thing, let the world see, let the light shine everywhere. And when it seems like no one's watching, do the right thing anyway. Just do the right thing, do the right thing.
Endorsements and not involved in all of these other things that these large publishers have. Does that mean that they are low quality or have less integrity than the kind of mega $1 million publishing outfits? No, it probably doesn't. They still operate with the same aim of publishing good science and learning from it. The movement between Norway and South America to compare what type of effects, what like human factors, what environmental factors affected the way in which glaciers moved, compared and contrast. So it was relevant to the understanding of Norwegian geography, but it wasn't actually based in geography. The research wasn't conducted wholly in Norway. So a regional journal may not be restricted to papers or authors from that area. It can have a wider scope than the name suggests. So how would you come across these journals? Where do you really make a start creating this list of journals to submit to? Well, I think the reference list of the paper that you're writing and the research that you read, if it's useful to you and you're using it in your research, it's likely that your paper, that is the result of being informed by that research, is going to be useful to those journals. They're going to be interested in it. So the very first list of journals to consider could be just the journals out of your reference list, and then you can go through and see. So when you see a regional journal in your reference list, the fact that you've referenced that regional journal in a paper on work that you've been conducting in Nigeria would suggest to you that maybe your paper might have some relevance to that journal. It may not. So you need to do more investigating, more reading around that journal to determine whether it is relevant or not. But that's a sort of example of how regionality of a journal doesn't necessarily preclude you from submitting to it. Then we have the open access journals, which I talked about mega journals. So obviously the greatest positive of open access journals and the open access movement is that they can be freely distributed, freely read. They can be read at the point of publication by anyone in the world, anywhere, at any time, provided they have an internet connection that's capable of accessing the paper. Again, which is something that you wonder where does the cost go? One of the cons, of course, the top con, is that they are expensive. But one of the things that these large publishers are doing that charge quite high article processing charges is making their websites accessible in kind of remote, lower technology countries, trying to find ways in which to make their content, these articles, accessible for all the places that don't have the same academic infrastructure as like New York or the Ivy League institutions and things like that. So in part that's another place where some of the money goes to that. Another key feature of open access, and one of the most important elements of it to some of the open science movement, is that the author keeps the copyright. You keep the rights to your work, to the original version of your work, and to the published version of your work, and you allow a publisher to put it on their website, and you license it with different types of license of your choice for what you want to allow the world to do with your work. And we'll look at those later. So it can allow your research to reach a wider audience. It can be read. It has the more research is read, the more people that read it, the more access people have to it, the more likelihood it has of being cited. And there is a lot of research going into the relationship between accessibility of papers and the number of citations, particularly open access. Are open access papers more likely to be cited? The findings on this are mixed. Some studies say yes, some studies say no. But before the citation, there definitely is more opportunity and infinitely greater potential for your work. It turn leads to you finding potentially collaborators and extending your network of people that you know, your professional network, people who you can speak to, potentially collaborate, discuss with. You know, these could be people, another person that you might send your draft for feedback on before you finish it and submit it to a journal. So, the cost of open access is one of its key features as well. There are many different models of finance for open access journals. Some, like Nature, are extortionately expensive by any means. That's $6,000 to publish one paper just because it's in Nature. Is that a value trade that you're willing to make? Do you think that you would get $6,000 per paper worth of readers or citations? Or is there any value? Or on the other end of the scale, except for the free ones, there are journals which offer an open access subscription, ironically, if that's not an oxymoron. So you pay, for example, the PeerJ, you pay a subscription fee to the journal every year, and you can publish as many papers in that journal as you want for 1 year. It's around $1,000 for an author to publish as many papers. So if your research group, or you individually, you know that you have a research program that's going to result in several papers in a year, cost would be a consideration for open access. And if you could get accepted into Nature, could you afford $20,000 for 1 year's worth of papers? Or would you rather use a model like PeerJ, where it's $1,000? So $19,000 less for that. To make your work as discoverable in both platforms, there's no difference in the people that can access it. But then the type of audience might be different between each one. Well, Nature has its readers, and the PeerJ has its community, so they're different. It's quite complicated, and this is the kind of answer that I can't prescribe to you, one which you'd have to weigh up and balance and determine for yourself about what is the most important thing for your research. It might actually change between different projects. Of course, another feature of kind of global collaboration and working with lots of different authors across a wide sphere influence is publishers that multi-country papers with authors from lots of different countries are purported to be cited more than papers from one single country. Not entirely sure of the reasons for this. Again, people are kind of investigating this, but people are conscious of it. The journals which are interested in adding and increasing and maintaining their high impact factors are aware of this. They do use this knowledge that this may be even if artifactual, it is a phenomenon of papers. Papers with authors from lots of different countries have higher citation rates than those from single author countries. So when you're collaborating, when you're meeting people all across the world, developing these networks, potential collaborators, potential international audiences, potential international Authorships, that is something which people who like high citations are conscious of, and you know, it might work. The discoverability. So again, where does this cost go? How do you find the journal? How do you find these journals? How do people find them? You as an author trying to identify a journal can look in all these places. I can give you a big list of directories and services where journals are listed. But as a reader and as a researcher, you will already have found the research that you have used to inform your work. So where you found that research from might be where other people who are relevant to your work, or who your work is relevant to, that might be the same place where they're going. So it's a good place to start. Search by subject area to see what different journals that they have, that they've listed in their databases, and what properties and qualities they say those journals have. All of these directories, the big ones, Scopus, Web of Science, IEEE, Explore, the Engineers Society organisation, PubMed. These all have selection and inclusion criteria. Even Google Scholar actually has inclusion criteria for the journals that it indexes, that it brings up in the results. The requirement for Google Scholar is that the metadata, title, authors, year of publication, journal of publication, the abstract, and preference to full text are all available, all searchable on the internet. So if a journal on their website has a list of their issues, and each article is just the title of the article and click to download the PDF, that will not come up in Google Scholar. That's unlikely to come up in Google Scholar because there's no metadata there on all of those other levels of criteria. So that's something to consider for discoverability when you're reviewing these journals. Whereas, say, a large publisher like Elsevier, Taylor & Francis, it will have available on the website, well, it's such a huge wealth because this is what they invest their money in doing. The title, the authors, the DOI will be there, that digital object identifier, the page numbers, the affiliations of all the authors, the abstract, maybe even a preview of some of the text. Because open access, obviously they have the full text available directly on the website. And all of that means it's machine readable. That's all metadata, which can be with the tagging, which can be read. All of these elements can be read by all of these databases. And that's what makes them discoverable. And that's what publishers invest a lot of this money in, where your article processing charges go. Those kind of innovations are where some of the money goes. And like contextual deep linking in references in a paper. So when you're reading something, and like we were talking about citations, Zizek observed that. So that reference will be linked, and you can click on it in the text of the paper you're reading, and it will show you a preview of the original article where that reference is taken from, the paragraph in the section of the paper where that quote, where that reference appears in the paper. So that kind of contextual referencing is very sophisticated, the kind of sophisticated technology where publishers are going with your money that they take from you to publish open access. And it's certainly not something which those predatory journals are investing in any way. And that's the kind of value that you can expect from the larger publishers, and might be something that you want for your research, so a factor in you choosing those journals. But back to the criteria. Okay, so all of these databases do have criteria. So the Web of Science, they are the people who create the impact factor, which is something that many researchers require or they're looking for. They're looking for journals with high impact factor. So that impact factor data comes from the Web of Science. which is owned by Clarivate. So they have their Web of Science database, that's one thing, that lists all of the papers in their database and counts the citations. So you have to pay for access. And then they have their Insights database, which is another separate database that you also have to pay to access, which is where the impact factor comes from. So that's two lots of cost that they're charging people to encourage academics and researchers to be obsessed with the impact factor. So they're making lots of money out of that, which might be consideration for your choice of journal as well. If that's something you wish to endorse. Scopus are the same. Scopus is owned by Elsevier and is it's not the largest database. The Scopus and the Web of Science are about the same size. They have about 30,000 different journals indexed in them. Scopus has slightly less. Web of Science has almost 40,000 in the Web of Science, but only 11,000 of those actually have an impact factor. And the difference in quality between those journals that do have an impact factor and don't is kind of negligible, otherwise they wouldn't have been included in the Web of Science anyway. And one of the key differences between a journal being included in the Web of Science and being in the top 25% that have an impact factor is simply the number of citations to other journals within the Web of Science already. So it's a little bit nepotistic and not necessarily the best measure of all of the citations in the world and the impact and value and presence of all the different journals that are available in the world. Scopus, another example, is owned by Elsevier, and they have a slightly more lenient acceptance criteria for inclusion in their database. They also have a metric, site score metric, Scimago journal rank, and all of the journals in the Scopus database have that metric. So there's not a top 25 hived off like in the impact factor. So they all have a metric. They also all give an H index based on Scopus data. So regardless of the metrics, these databases do have acceptance criteria, and they look for things like standards of editorial procedures. So you know that at some point these journals did conduct editorial practice with a reasonable amount of efficiency. Editors actually got back to the authors. They didn't lose any papers down the back of the sofa. They got back to people reasonably timely. They follow certain ethical guidelines. They publish on time. If it's a subscription print-based journal, they do send it to everyone when they say they're going to. They meet their publication schedules. And all sorts of kind of criteria along these lines that mean that if a journal is listed in this database, then it is of a significant amount of quality. So this is why, this is why I say about the Web of Science. It has 40,000 journals in it that meet very good quality standards of how journals should operate and be conducted, and the editorial processes, how they should be conducted. But only 25% of them have an impact factor. So really, if you're looking for a quality journal, just being in the Web of Science is fine. Just being in Scopus is fine. Even being in PubMed is fine. They have the same standards. You have to provide the same type of information to be included in PubMed. So if you want to double check your predatory journals, for example, go back to a predatory journal. If you want to confirm how good that is, you can look it up in Scopus or Web of Science or PubMed and see. If it's in there, then it might be okay. Also, some predatory journals say they are listed in the Web of Science. We're listed in Scopus. We're listed in ISI rankings and try to pass it off as Web of Science. It doesn't take much if you have access to these. It doesn't take much to search for them and find out whether that's true or not. But not everyone does have access to these platforms. So that's what these journals take advantage of, these predatory journals. That's the kind of deception that they take advantage of like knowing lots of people don't have access to these databases to confirm whether that's true or not. So you can't confirm it. And they put a symbol up from the Web of Science, say we have an impact factor, it's this, but it's not true. So that kind of deception marks a journal out as being one of those predatory ones to avoid, that offer you no value, just try to take your money. But it can be hard to actually confirm that that is the case. So another note on discoverability, accessibility, but also more as well as promotion of your work once it's accepted. Does the journal or publisher have a social media presence? Do they do any promotion of work? Do they discuss the articles that they're publishing on a platform anywhere? Do their journals have actually active, specifically appointed social media editors? This is something that, personally, all journals should do. They should definitely have social media editors. It is a modern essential part of an editorial board. I think they should. So the journals that do win lots of extra brownie points from me. If they have social media presence, that's good. That means they're investing time. Then, if you can look through these profiles, if they are actually active and being used, that's good. They increase your chances of being promoted as an author and giving you access to another type of reader or another new audience that you can get involved with your work. So at the bottom we have symbols for altmetric and plum. And these are alternative metric platforms devised as an alternative to the impact factor and the traditional citation metrics. They were created about 5 years ago, altmetric about 5 years ago, 6 years ago now, probably plum just 1 year after. All Elsevier journals use plum analytics. They have a symbol that's four colour circles, like a splat sort of configuration. Whereas altmetric has this donut. And this is another place where your article processing charge money goes. And this is something that benefits open access papers more than traditional locked down papers. This is something that you can maximise the potential of with open access. So certainly this is where a lot of that article processing charge money is going, investing in things like this. And what these platforms do, you can see widgets on publisher platforms with these symbols on. And these platforms record the presence of an article around the internet on various sources, lots of different sources. So all those different colours in that altmetric circle, they represent a different place in which a paper can be mentioned. In news media, on a blog, see who they are. If they said something interesting, see who they are. Someone in your field, do you want to follow them? So, first things first, to go back a bit, if you're a researcher, you need to be on Twitter, basically. That's my key message for that, is Twitter is huge in terms of science communication and people corresponding with each other. Promoting work and supporting each other. Different fields have their own Twitter communities, so you can get on it, make a profile, build up your network and your contacts through Twitter. Then when you have published research, if you have any questions about the research that you're conducting, just to put them out there, you get answers. It's enormously well used. So these altmetric things measure all of that kind of stuff, and you can see it in context. Unlike a citation, which just tells you this paper was used was cited once, you don't know how it was cited, you don't know whether it was positive or negative comment about it or in what way. So all metrics let you actually see the context and how your paper was used. Particularly with policy documents, you can see where it appears, what kind of policy you've been informing. On news, so you can see where your research is being used. So when you're choosing a journal, if you can see these widgets and look into the information inside them, you can see the community that is involved in the journal. You can see who they are, and you can have a poke around and actually see where this research is being shared and who's using it. And as an author, you know that if you publish in this journal, you will have access to all of this information about where your own work is going and who is using it. And you can kind of capitalise on this to show people, if your research has to be assessed. So previously you need to publish in an impact factor journal. Why? Well, because that means that people will cite your work. Does it though? I'm not sure that it definitely does. It just means that some paper in this journal was cited in the last couple of years. Whereas if you use these alternative metrics, you can say that every day that they're asking, that's still 2 months. It's still over 2 months just to get 2 people to agree. And it took a lot longer than 2 months to get all those people. Because some reviewers take 2 weeks to reply to that request, and then they decline, and then you can ask someone else. So as a reviewer, one of the most useful things you can do if you can't review a paper is to say no, and help things get moving a lot faster. So it's a very time-consuming process, but we want some human element in helping us make judgments. We also want to foster the community around the journal and involve people and tell them we regard their opinions, we hold them in high esteem. We want their input into the papers that are published in their journal. We want to maintain the community around the journal. And that is one of the most important things of peer review as well. And one reason why it's never going to go completely away, regardless of how problematic it is or how inconsistent it is. It's because it enhances a journal's community, helps involve it, and that's something that scientific communities need to maintain and foster. So the speed of publication related to peer review, as I suggested, peer review can take a very long time, or it can be quick. Here's a chart, a figure showing the average peer review time of papers indexed in PubMed between 1980 and 2015. And as you can see, in all of that time, the average peer, the speaker objects to peer review time. It has remained unchanged for all of that time. And during that time, we've changed from paper-based postal peer review communication to online access of papers, online submission websites. So to think, what are we doing with this increased efficiency of being able to do stuff immediately, in bed, in the morning, where we don't have to wait for the post? How come the peer review process hasn't sped up? And that's because it involves humans, and humans have to make decisions. And I guess it's safe to say around 100 days what you can expect for the majority of journals. And here we have an interesting bar chart comparing the speed of peer review to the impact factor of a journal. So is the impact factor a measure of quality? Is peer review speed a measure of quality? Can we triangulate the two into this elusive quality that we want to call quality, this elusive item? So no, probably not, if by looking at this chart, where we can see highest impact factor journals with an impact factor of 50 have the slowest peer review time. So what can we infer from that? The longer the peer review time takes, the higher the impact factor of the journal. So can we say, please take 3 years to review my paper? That means it's going to get like 600 citations. No, causation, correlation is not causation. But you know, that's an interesting chart, I think. One to dwell on when you receive the handouts later. Mull over it, what it really means. Okay, so licensing. Licensing and copyright. I spoke about at the beginning. The type of license, the type of copyright is useful for you as an author to know what you're allowed to do with your work, who it's for, and it's useful for you as a reader and an author to know what you can do with the work that you're citing and who you have to ask permission for, how you cite it, what you can use it for. So these are the kind of traditional publishing models that we have. Traditional publishing, which is subscription access. The reader has to pay to access the article. Gold open access model, where the author pays to have their paper published to be freely accessible. The green open access model, where the author might pay a bit less than a gold open access payment to be allowed to deposit the publisher version, publisher typeset, nice PDF, to put that version of the paper into a repository after an embargo period, usually 6 or 12 months they're allowed to do it. So that's the green open access model. Hybrid journals are traditional models, traditional subscription journals, which allow their authors to choose open access, choose gold, or choose green. They just do anything. They take their money from anyone. Well, so they want to give people the opportunity to read as much of their content as possible. So that kind of licensing, predatory publishers won't distinguish between, they should all be open access anyway. Copyrights. For copyright, traditional copyright, with that traditional publishing model, has to now involved researchers signing the rights to their paper over to the publisher and not retaining many rights at all. However, in much of these traditional publishing, these copyright agreements, authors are still allowed to use the original pre-submitted versions of their papers. You still have a lot of rights around this original version that you submitted. You can use it in class, you can likely share it on a platform like ResearchGate, or deposit it in an institutional repository. You just can't use the final version that the publisher has posted on their website in the typeset, watermarked publisher version. Open access, by contrast, one of the key features of open access that actually differentiates between an article that is simply free to read and one that is open access is the license which underpins it. So a publisher can make articles free to access, but they are not open access. And a free to access article an open access paper, well, most publishers have been, or all the legitimate ones, certainly, are all very consistent and have all invested in using this orange lock symbol to define an open access paper. So when you see this, you know it's open access. When you don't see that, and you can see the PDF, you can see the full article, it's just free to access. And if it's just free, it'll probably be the old copyright model. But if it has the orange open access thing, then it's an open access paper, and it will have a Creative Commons license. So to know what you can do in terms of citing, reusing the content, in terms of what permissions you need, if you want to ask permission to reuse a figure, this is what tells you how you need to do it. So if you're reading a lot of open access papers, or reading any papers, this is the copyright line, the agreement line that you need to look at. CC BY with the person on the left, that just means attribution only. You can do whatever you want with that paper. You can reuse it, you can take a big quote out of it, you can repurpose it, resell it, put it in a book along with 10 other papers and sell them, and that's okay so long as you attribute the source. But other licenses include non-commercial, where you can't make any money, and no derivatives, where you can't change any of the topic, any of the content at all. If you use it, you have to use it in its entirety. So that's some notes on what those copyright things mean. Some other factors that might influence your, that we shall touch on very briefly, are archiving your article if that's necessary. Do they allow that in various things? Which form of your article can they do? Check the small print of the copyright if you have to publish in a subscription journal. Do they publish supplementary data? If they're a paper-based journal and they have page limits and you have a huge number of tables, do they have the facilities, infrastructure to provide supplementary data? Do they use somewhere like Figshare to upload all of your data sets to? So funding agency policies and compliance with public access mandates. Does the journal support these? Do they allow them? Check before submitting. You might save yourself some time. Is the article readable on mobile devices? Publishers know that you've seen statistics suggest most of our activity now online is done through handheld devices. Handheld devices tend to be quite small. Journal articles tend to be quite long and big. Is it easy to read? Has the publisher made any effort to actually make their journal screen readable easily? So that's good. Article processing charges, we've covered enough. Is it expensive? Can you justify that expense to yourself? Does the journal provide enough value and opportunity that you're willing to pay the price, effectively? Now, if something is worth as much as you're willing to pay for, is shorthand for how you can interpret that. Is the price worth it? And ethical guidelines. I spoke a bit about the type of ethical conduct and guidelines which underpin some journals. Some journals will actually subscribe and be a member of an organisation like COPE, Committee on Publication Ethics, which provides lots of guidance to journals and authors and peer reviewers for them to define how they should behave and the ways in which the publishing process should be conducted, the way in which editors should behave, authors and peer reviewers should behave. So if they're subscribed to an organisation like COPE, then you know they do have pretty rigorous ethical standards and a course of action to take should anything problematic occur. So I shall finish with some selection tools that can be very helpful for you. Start on the top right. The directory of open access journals is pretty much what it says it is. It is a directory of all journals that publish open access papers, or that are open access journals. Now they have I think they have a select badge that's a kind of, I'm not sure what it is, because some of the journals have it, like a gold seal, and some of the journals in our database don't. But the criteria for selection is no different. So one with a stamp is not better than one without a stamp. I think that's worth saying, because you might think that a stamp means it's better, but there's nothing in the directory of open access journal criteria that tells the difference between those two things. And I know that because they tweeted yesterday, just to be clear on that topic. Science Open is a platform that aggregates all open access, publicly available content from the entire internet. They aggregate it in one place, so you can search for it, add it to reading lists, you can curate lists of content, and put them into topic folders, invite people to read this kind of stuff, and get involved in groups and things. So it's very good on a social, enhancing your reputation of the kind of papers you're reading, and helping to add something else to your community. It's good for that, but it's also good if you want to search for some research and you need it to be open access. You don't want to mess around with risking paywalls and things. You can use Science Open and know what you find you'll be able to read. Springer and Elsevier both have fully functioning search tools that are quite good. Put your title and your abstract in and bring you some results. The results are quite useful, contain useful information, but they're limited to their journals only, on those publisher-only journals, of course. So effective but limited. Think, check, submit will help you determine whether a journal is a predatory journal or not, or whether you think it is. And find my journal it's just a pan publisher, pan internet journal selection tool that has some of the same search criteria by fields and other subcategories to filter it, and tries to find and recommend journals that might be of interest to you. So that's end of part 2 and the end of my workshops in Nigeria. Contestant number 1.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nicholas. My question is not really a question, but it's like an experience. I want to share with you. My name is Dr. Abamara NC of the Department of Psychology. About 3 years ago,
please, the directive is question. We will have time for it. We sent out our papers to some journals, editors in the UK, and the paper was, they didn't accept the paper, they didn't reply for a long time. About 3 papers in 3 different journals. And after about a year, one editor of those journals replied and told us that even though our papers meet the criteria for publications and the templates all that, but the man replied said that he cannot publish our papers because no African has ever published in that journal. That's what he said. It's an experience. No African has ever published in that journal. And I replied and I told him that I want to be the first African to publish in that work. So is that normal? Is that normal? That's my question.
Yes. That question has appeared. Well, I've been asked that same question for every workshop, 4 workshops. So unfortunately, it does appear to be normal, and we have to work how can we prevent this bias? How can we change this bias? What can we do? To be honest, as I kind of mentioned, the peer review process, journal editors, they're very conservative in what they publish in their journals. That's beyond conservative, it's discriminatory. Hopefully there are more reasons, maybe not. But yes, apparently, as I've learned from these workshops, that is normal, and we have to see what we can do about it.
The second person.
To use impact factor rating or ranking for promotion of academics. That's one. Then 2, what is the place of Thomson Reuters indexing house in impact factor rating?
In case you didn't get my first answer, it's no, never. No. We tried to stop this. There is an organisation, DORA, the Declaration of Research Assessment, in San Francisco several years ago, in which researchers, organisations, journals, universities, they signed it to declare that they're dedicated to not using the impact factor or any journal level citation metrics to assess individual researchers' performance, because the two cannot be related. So there's that. That's my long answer to say no. The second question, who are Thomson Reuters? Thomson Reuters don't own the Web of Science anymore. It's owned by Clarivate, a different company. I don't know what to say. What they do is very interesting. The impact factor is one small part of kind of data, the network of citation data and what can be achieved through interrogating citation data. So what they're doing is quite interesting. They have lots of interesting projects. So they are worth kind of looking at their website, see what they're doing. And the impact factor, like I said, it measures something, but how you use it is down to personal choice interpretation. And it's being used wrong at the moment.
Google Scholar has about the indexing companies. Because I'm aware that this university recognizes and has a preference for Google Scholar over others. And there are others, so why is this so? Is there any special?
Thank you.
Good question. So the question was, what advantage does Google Scholar have over other abstracting indexing databases? And there's a very good answer to this. They index anything that is available online that met those basic criteria that I was saying. So metadata, title, authors, preferably abstract, preferably full text. So they index the entire internet for what they can find for that. So the good thing is they'll bring you preprints, articles that are posted on blogs, on websites, so long as it has all those proper referencing identification points, which means you can use it and you'll be appropriately crediting the author who wrote it with the right citation. So it facilitates better communication of research, more efficient, particularly because it serves as a preprint service as well. That's the most important. Put it on a preprint server before you send it to a journal. So that's the advantage of Google Scholar.
Reporting guidelines. Website organizations that those kind of reporting guidelines.
Yes, so in the question, have the website for the reporting guidelines. Yes, when we send all of the slides to your emails, I'm going to include a summary of all the questions that we have had through this series of workshops, and I'll put the questions and the answers, and that will be in there for you in an appendix of questions and answers. So yes, all the links and things that I've mentioned that haven't been on the slides, I will add.
The fifth person.
Please, my question is, most times during such lectures, it's always people on the sciences that are being talked about. Nothing had to do with the arts and humanities. So I want to know what journals and how are we going to go about them?
Yeah, that is a good question. My background is STM publishing. I don't know an awful lot about how arts and humanities journals operate, because I understand it's reasonably different. Something I just haven't had the opportunity to really get involved in. So unfortunately, I have to say, I don't really know. So I don't know enough about the differences or what you're looking for. So I'm sorry. Go out on a proper low there, bomb at the end. Sorry.
We take the last round, so I look for indications. I must not remember where you are. 1, 2, any other person? 3, any other person? 4. I didn't see her. I've looked past that. 5. So 6, and that's the last. After the rest of the interaction, meet people outside. We will have our own interaction so that he can easily catch his flight. So number 1, please, when I say 1, if you don't indicate, I will give the wrong person. I don't even recognize who said 1 or 2.
Thank you very much. My name is Engineer Paul Okoye from the Department of Mechanical Engineering, Michael Okwa, University of Agriculture, So my question is, you didn't say anything on plagiarism much, but I would like to know where I can obtain free online softwares where I can assist to check for plagiarism for my students' work and my colleagues' work and my own work.
And my own work too.
Okay, but they all cost money. I don't know a free one. I'll look for some free ones for the question and answer supplement, and I'll leave you a note in the Q&A appendix.
That's from UNIZIK. My question is, most beginners battle with finding topics for journals, and I expected some tips for choosing topics. Thank you.
New researchers find it hard to identify topics to study. How can they choose a topic? Read is the answer. Compare all the literature. Try to read the newest literature. I mean, you know, there are ways to find the newest literature that's published in every single journal. It is possible to find it all if you really want. Yeah, you can access it. They just have to read. The only way, you know, I can say, follow what you're interested in. Start with the subject you're interested in, and then read and identify the gap in the knowledge that you think will be useful, that you want to pursue. That really is something that you cannot tell someone the answer to. The answer to what they should be interested in and should want to investigate. Yeah, although I do hear that question a lot. I need a PhD topic. What should I do my PhD on? So, if you don't know what you want to study for a PhD, don't start. Definitely don't go down that road if you don't know why or what you want to do, because it's going to be like 10 years of hell. So you have to know, and you have to find that for yourself. And really, the only way you can do that in research is to read. Right? And also be involved in the communities, maybe online. If you can, you know, Twitter. You know, some people don't believe me when I say science. Twitter is amazing. It's an amazing thing. It might take a while to get properly into it, but you can learn so much from it, and it can give you ideas on things like that. But ultimately, you can't be told what to be interested in. That's my answer to that.
Tell us for your prompt answers to our questions. But I want to ask you a question. I'm still Dr. N.C. Abamara of the Department of Psychology, UNIZIK. This question is quite very apt, but I want to ask it. This question now goes, how potent is the ResearchGate? ResearchGate. At the moment, I have about 20 research articles there. How potent is that research platform? That platform. Can it be comparable with Google Scholar, Thomson Reuters? To mention but a few.
Because the precedent is Napster, Pirate Bay, all those publisher copywritten material platforms. They were taken down. So the precedent is there. However, unlike the music industry, there isn't a way for researchers to share their papers legally through a platform like ResearchGate. So all ResearchGate need to do is get their act together, make it very clear which versions of papers that they are encouraging people to share. And they could have taken this, the recent lawsuits and takedown notices from publishers. ResearchGate could have used this as an opportunity to educate young researchers, all researchers, about what is legally allowed to be shared. So like I was saying, the version of your paper that you submit to the journal in the first place, most copyright gives you the permission to post that to repositories like ResearchGate. So it's very likely that all of the research, pretty much, that a huge amount of research that is locked behind paywalls could have been made available through ResearchGate by the original version. You can still tell people where the citation is. So if it appears in a journal, the journal will receive the citation. But this preprint version, you can upload. You retain most of your rights to use that version. So check the small print of your copyright. If you can use the preprint version of your article, the pre-submitted version, then you can upload and share that to ResearchGate. So yes, ResearchGate is enormously valuable and should be one of the future ways in which researchers communicate, share their research, and it should have really facilitated research, but they've run themselves into loads of trouble unnecessarily. So we'll have to see whether it survives for much longer. But for the moment, use it, but not the publisher PDF. Don't share the publisher's watermarked, typeset, page-numbered version that appears on their website. Don't share that. Just the Word version that you submitted, that version. And everything will be fine.
My question is on predictory journals, that is presumed fake journals. We know that many of us here, especially some of the professors, some of them are published in those journals and they are stay true. But recently they said that some of the predictory journals can't use it for promotion. Okay? And on the same note, these journals, they have a good impact factors. They also are in Google Scholars, Scopus, yet they still refer them as predictory journals. How then will we know those journals on time? Thank you.
The question was, these predatory journals, what they say they are in Web of Science, or they actually are. No, the criteria for the Web of Science is pretty thorough, and they ask for a certain number of issues of the journal to be sent to them, and they assess them manually. They read the papers, and they ask for evidence of peer review process. So they ask for a kind of like summary reports of peer review activity, of statistics of peer review workflows and things. So it's unlikely that any journal with no value, like a predatory one, like a proper malicious, deceptive, dubious journal, is going to be in the Web of Science. It's very unlikely. So the other way to check that is to search, if you can, search for that journal in Web of Science and Scopus. Lots of these journals say we're listed in Scopus, we're listed in ISI.
Thank you so much, sir. Please can we put our hands together for him again? Mr. Dr. Nicholas, that was wonderful. I don't want to make this comment, but we know it's a general comment before I hand over to Dr. S.B. Ramon Yusuf. The moment people eat and leave, it's like they are just waiting to eat. And our guests may not be comfortable with that. We're almost rounding up after the questions. Thank you.
Very much for this time you have spent with us. We really appreciate it. I want to especially thank those who came just in time for lunch. Yeah, because when we started out, I know how many of us started out, and people trickled in very tirelessly for lunch. The email addresses, and everyone on our attendance sheet will get copies of the lecture. This is the last workshop, so we're going to compile all these email addresses and send the materials. We also intend to send certificates of participation, but as a quality assurance officer, I feel very uncomfortable to give certificates for those who came for a 10 o'clock workshop at 2:30. In good conscience, those ones do not expect any certificate. I will be wondering how I will know. I've told the MC to draw a line, because it doesn't speak well of us. Because if you ask somebody coming from even Port Harcourt, come to Oka to collect money at 6 o'clock, everybody will hear. So all this talk and bull story about your place is just for me, it already told me who you are. one pertains to the questions asked by people who I think are graduate students. You know, one major problem in our university system in Nigeria today is that there is serious mentoring gap. It is likely in Nigeria to find a supervisor who may even be paid for supervision, who asks a student to go into the wilderness to hunt for a topic. I mean, anybody who has gone to a proper university that has a proper graduate school where professors are selected as supervisors based on areas of competence, current competence, not historical competence. They will know what the topics are. They will know what the current issues are, where the frontier of knowledge is, and which colleagues can assist their fellow students across the world. That is what they expect. But all the analog people who are not up to date just punish graduate students. MSc can take 7 years while they are collaborating. And they don't read those topics sometimes because they don't understand it. That is quite clear that the issue of predatory journals is an evolving one, because at some point people are not aware that a lot of these Asian journals were predatory. And as people will say in English, the stable door has been opened and the horse has bolted. So those who are benefited from it are benefited. So it doesn't stop one from blocking the stable because one or two horses have escaped. So if some of the senior ones have escaped with the predatory journals, it does not mean that the university is being wicked by shutting that door. What I can assure you on behalf of the Secretary of Refugees is that I'm going to cause another workshop to be organized very sincerely.
Vice Chancellor is not yet back. He had an emergency and ran out, but he's not yet back. But we have to end the session. And I'm looking for a very senior person to help us in this appreciation.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your effort. It is true that most of the people that should be here are not here. But I'm sure that those of us that are here, that will never regret it, that we have gained a lot. No knowledge is a waste. We learn every day. We learn from Monday to Saturday to Sunday. There are lectures. I was not even, I just felt like, let it continue and let it continue. And sir, you are a principal. You are the NUC. You are our principal. And you know what we need. I'm happy that my colleague raised that issue. We really need it. It's true that research is research, but we still need more. Please, from time to time, this type of workshop should be organized in different universities. There is no rationale for, in one university, people will not be promoted because of impact factor, while the other universities, they are promoted. So if we have a uniform standard for such promotions, I'm sure that everybody will be happy, and we can continue to work hard. And my students, the length of time that a project lasts.
Professor, to say a very great thank you for this session. We are going to take the UNIZIK anthem, which goes.
I let it fall.